And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
And back with a look at your aviation weather now. For Tuesday morning, expect widespread IFR across the north and eastern Gulf Coast all the way around to KUAC Island, surrounding a broad area of low pressure here in the Gulf, and of course under a broad area of low pressure in the upper levels, which you'll see here in the jet stream map here in just a moment. We're also expecting to see IFR across the North Slope and especially the Chukchi Coast, a little bit of that pulling inward toward the higher terrain here as we get eastward along the Beaufort Seacoast. Hit and miss marginal conditions across the eastern Alaska Range up through Denali and Healy, up the Parks Highway, and into the flats there. You'll probably start to see some of that breaking up, and it could include areas around Fairbanks as well. Watch for some breaks in the marginal conditions there across the Yukon Delta, into the Seward Peninsula and the Chukchi Sea itself, with IFR pulling into Bristol Bay. You can see most of Bristol Bay is covered up. And then west of Adak and Atka, we're looking at VFR conditions out there. That should continue through the afternoon. No big changes here across the Gulf, but you might see some improvement across southeastern Alaska. Prince William Sound up through some of the passes, including Tanita Pass, looking like IFR there. Southwest Lake Iliamna all the way out toward Cape Newenham, south from Port Hayden, and areas up through McCormick, just about still looking at marginal conditions. As we get into the North Slope, most of the slope will be IFR. Most of the Beaufort Seacoast will be IFR. Areas out toward Kaktovik, though, may sneak in under VFR, it looks like, through Tuesday afternoon. You'll go back into marginal conditions by Wednesday morning, looking for IFR from the Brooks Range southward towards southwestern Alaska, all the way out towards St. Matthew. Also looking for areas of IFR extending into Prince William Sound and especially the outer coast of southeast. Places like Haines, Skagway, all the way down toward Hyder might sneak in under marginal conditions, and IFR will be passing through parts of Kodiak Island. That may continue to hover very close to marginal, if not IFR levels, for Wednesday afternoon. Areas outside of Prince William Sound looking to be IFR. The Barren Island region there through Cook Inlet also looking to be IFR. Lake Iliamna all the way down toward Cold Bay, False Pass, and King Cove, also expected to hover close to IFR, if not marginal, all day long. And then most of the Yukon Delta, the Koyukuk Valley, Galena out toward Deering, and Nome should hold around IFR conditions most of the day. Here's your pass conditions for Tuesday then in detail. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass I think will clearly be IFR for Tuesday. Maybe some changes there on Wednesday. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass holding an IFR throughout your day. Rainy Pass also looking to be IFR. Windy Pass, marginal conditions throughout the day. Isabel Pass leans over toward IFR as we go. Mentasta Pass does the same thing, heading toward IFR as we get into the afternoon. Tanita Pass, starting at a marginal, probably worsens throughout the day. With the disturbance holding in the Gulf, we'll keep IFR in place for Portage Pass and maybe some minor improvement around Chilkoot and White Pass as we go. Perhaps looking a little bit better there on Wednesday. Freezing levels show that surface freezing line holding right through Shelikof Strait up through Cook Inlet and then dropping over toward Haines and Skagway. The 2,000 and 4,000 foot levels are sitting right over southeast, Kodiak Island, and the Kenai Peninsula. Everything else sub-freezing at this point. What that means for icing potential is we have lower levels there across southeast and the eastern Gulf. Between about 3,000 and 7,000 feet and higher for Gulf Coast communities, but it gets a little more complicated as you move inland, anywhere from about 8,000 feet above for areas around Fairbanks and north and below 4,000 feet. There's a patch there that icing will not be very significant at all, and then above 5,000 feet as you get into some warmer air up above the North Slope. So again, check your conditions before you head out, and again, expect some changes as we go through Tuesday and Wednesday. The jet stream right now has a broad area of low pressure across the Bering. That's driving in some very active weather into the Gulf and then sending that into the North American west coast. Broad southerly flow, though, is riding over most of Alaska right now, 65 to 70 knots. The main action, though, is just south of the region, so we're stuck in a lot of the cold pattern. Low pressure over Bristol Bay giving us southerly flow for the interior and southeast, anywhere from 25 to 50 knots over southeast, and northerlies coming down through the Bering Strait, 30 to 50 knots there, 40 to 50 across the Alaska Peninsula. Patterns generally the same there at 3,000 feet. Speeds are a little bit stronger out across some parts of the upper Koyukuk, around 40 to 50 knots there. Southerlies a little bit further eastward, anywhere from 15 to 30 knots, and southeast looking at lighter winds here at around 10 to 15, with the strongest winds out of the Alaska Peninsula and over St. Paul and St. George, 35 knots over the North Slope from the north and northeast. Looking at turbulence, then the main focus should be across the western Brooks Range, the Seward Peninsula, and the Yukon and Kuskokwim deltas, below about 4,000 feet for most cases there. South Central, it looks like the main considerable moderate threat will be over the Prince William Sound, Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet down through Kodiak Island and Shelikof Strait, and hit and miss across the Alaska Range. No significant signal for turbulence for southeast or most of the interior.